All right, what's going on, everyone? Today here we're bringing a tier list for the leaders going into OP05 format. It is starting here this week. The first leader we have here is Zoro. We're gonna put Zoro. I'm gonna put Zoro at tier 1 just because He's just got the best effect, I think, overall, generically in the game outside of Sakazuki, because -1's actually crazy on an attack with no Dawn requirement. But gaining 1,000 plus being able to spam out a bunch of low-cost characters that you can easily replace is really strong. So, like, Sakazuki can get rid of them, but you can still keep playing them out, and people have seen success with Zoro. So it's definitely a contender. Law, I'm also going to put him at tier 1. It's really interesting going into this format. A lot of these leaders, like, one beats the other, but can't beat this deck. So it's a lot of, like, flow chart. I can beat this, but can't beat that. And I think a lot of it, what we see later in the format, is really going to come down to people's matchups. As we've seen before, if you don't get a bad matchup, you can go very far. But Law being able to play 5-drop characters for 2 and also continually recycle characters to generate more cards and gain card advantage is absolutely huge. Again, like Sakazuki, of course, pretty much doesn't have a bad matchup except for yellow with Katakuri, because nobody has a good Katakuri matchup, because it's just like, oh, 1 casino but 2 big mom. It's like, okay, like, it doesn't matter, because you're just going to big mom, and then you create a 2 life deficit until they're at 0, and then you just swing with big mom. And it's like, it's pretty hard to lose if you have 2 big moms and you're in a decent position when you play the first big mom, because big mom will clear anything on board. But yeah, and then we got Luffy. Honestly, OP05, he's not good. OP06, I think this Luffy slept on. Same with Odin. I think Odin is tier 6. Doflamingo, I'm going to give tier 2. Giving Doflamingo tier 2 just because Doflamingo can play out bodies essentially for free, so he doesn't lose hand advantage while establishing board, which is huge. And then being able to go wide very early is very underrated, especially since you have cards like Sentomaru that you could potentially play to also. Essentially 3 Dawn, Sentomaru is going to play a character, and you could go 2 Dawn with Dofi and play a character. They don't flow very well just because Sentomaru shuffles your deck, but just having cards like that in blue overall, being able to go a little bit wider is huge. Purple, blue Kaido. Purple gets so much crazy support. I didn't mean to put him there. But purple gets so much crazy support, and the blue side of the Animal Kingdom Pirates also gets some support. So it's really, really interesting. Honestly, I'm going to put him in tier 3 just because, like, I think this is something that it's like a local level winner. Like, you could lose this at locals because, 1, you don't know how to play against it, but 2, 10-drop Kaido is pretty strong too. This could make its way there if it avoids, like, Sakazuki. And, yeah, I mean, like, we just got the huge buff. You can essentially have a 6k leader. You can search Oneganshima, and if you get Oneganshima, you're so much stronger. So if you go turn 1, find an Oneganshima, turn 2, play it, ramp, and you start ramping, because then whenever you play effects, your effects cost less because you're ramping 1 every turn, so you're essentially gaining 3 each turn. And yeah, just overall, I mean, I loved Kaido. I won locals with Kaido. Purple, but the Blurple is still pretty solid, I think, because you do get the blue searcher and you do get the blue cards, which are some pretty powerful cards. Blue purple Croc, I'm gonna put him at 6. He just doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. Same with King. I'm gonna put King at 6. Now, here in the US, we just got cards unbanned. If my mic comes unplugged, my bad. My cat's like on my cord. Just tell me, chat, if my mic comes unplugged. So true, though, Bandit Beeler. But yeah, so then we've got Newgate. And obviously, as we know, Newgate dominated 2 whole formats until they got rid of him. 3 whole sets. He dominated 3 whole sets until they got rid of him. And now he's back full power. He started seeing a rise near the end, especially since people started playing Katakuri to counter Sakazuki. And once that happens, obviously, Katakuri is really for Newgate, just because Newgate goes to 0 and then Big Mom loses half the value. But I'm going to take a hot take here. I'm going to put Newgate at 2-0 just because so many of us here in the U.S. absolutely love Newgate as a card, as a leader, and so many have literally 3 sets worth of practice on Newgate, and I know a ton of people are excited to get back. Obviously, that can change, but we do have Marco. We do have both Marcos, which cannot be destroyed, which takes away the value of Luchi and forces cards to be used like Hound Blaze and other bottom decks to answer those. And then, of course, we've got Garp. I'm going to put Garp I'll put Garp right here with Newgate just because, again, like you can play the whole Luchi engine. You can play that, which is not a bad engine. Like Luchi was becoming a thing, and you, of course, have access to the red cards. Red has some pretty nasty cards. Hasn't gotten anything good in like 2 sets, but we're not here to talk about that. But I think Garp, again, like I've played against Garp as it is now on a local level, and I think this is just that level that like people could play at locals and potentially like, you know, top your locals, maybe not win. If they're really good players, they could potentially win. But yeah, I think he's about tier 3. Kinemon, I'll put Kinemon at tier 4. Just below these, obviously playing 1 for 1 less Don is pretty cool, but just no extra support. I don't think there's much to support him here. I'm going to also put Sanji here at tier 3. Green and blue just have some great cards overall. Obviously, you know, it isn't anything that you're going to see on any competitive level by any means, but it is something that you could play locally, that you could potentially see success with and also have a fun time playing. I think that's kind of where like tier 3 is. This is like, okay, like you could probably win a game or 2 at locals playing these. Now, this one's going to be spicy, but I'm going to put Ivankov like right here too. Tier 4, again, you could possibly see it. Sometimes it can be a pain to play against, but like if you can just run away with the game, you usually can, especially just in OP05. Things just drastically change, especially if you're playing like the meta and you're just playing these gigantic. It's like Purple Luffy, you're playing, well, now you play a little bit more wide is how it was going, but you were playing just gigantic beat sticks, and of course just being a higher power leader. Magellan, I'm going to put at, I really don't want to put him at tier 2, but I'm going to put him at tier 2 just because, again, like purple gets a huge buff. You get Zoro Joro, you get, if you want to play, you can't play it in this, but you get the Law, you get Kid, and when you Don minus, you gain a Don, and that's just absurd because if you go 2 Kids, you play the 2 Eustace, and then you go Don -1, you gain 2 Dons. So that's just an absurd combo. If you get that, it's very strong. So you can play, if you have 2 Eustace, and then you play a Magellan, and you go -1, your leader will gain 1,000 power for that turn, and then you gain 2 Dons. So you +1 Don from minusing, and your opponent still goes down a Don, unless they're playing purple. But even then, it's only during your turn, so just absurd. So I think just because of that, I'm going to put that there. Same here with tier 3. I think Z's underrated. Again, he can also, I believe he should be able to play the Luchi engine as well. And then, of course, having those purple cards being very strong. His ability also working very well with cards like Kuzan and things like that, being able to minus. But the Don minus, of course, is unfortunate unless you're at 10, then you go 8 and you don't have any cards that you need to play at that. Uncle Smokey, I'm going to put at 4. Still just decent. But I don't think he's going to see anything, and I don't think many people are going to be playing this at their local level either. Now, the moment I know y'all been waiting for, the moment I know every single person here has been waiting for, Ace. Where do I put Ace on this list? And honestly, it's really hard, right? Because, you know, I absolutely love Ace with every fiber of my being as a leader and as a character. He's really, you know, he's pretty well-rounded. I mean, he's essentially like, you can really think of it as like Newgate Jr. I mean, they can play the exact same cards. And as I kind of proved, it works. But then you have Sakazuki, and you still have the same thing. The difference is you're not a 6K leader, which, of course, when you're like playing Newgate, that's one of the biggest things that Newgate has going for it, and also why Red Purple Luffy saw a huge amount of success is because going up to 6 is kind of hard. So that's the big definer here in this instance. But honestly, if there was a 1.5, I'd probably put him right there. I can't put him at tier 1. I'm going to put him at tier 2. I would say like 1.5 because I definitely think he's better than Doflamingo. I think he's better than every single leader in tier 2 because you get access to both Marcos. So you have characters that cannot be removed, and only Sakazuki and Blue can try to remove them. But there's a lot of Sakazuki. Purple Luffy, you can just Flame Emperor any big character that they play, and then you can Jet Pistol or Fire Fist pretty much anything else. Huge utility for him. I think he's the top of all tier 2s. I think he's the number 1 tier 2. He's seen success. He has, I don't think he's won anything, but I believe he's like gone, like I've seen him in X1 lists. I think he's won their CS, their championship series local level events. But yeah, I would put him top forefront, tier 2. Again, if there's 1.5 on here, that's what I would rank him as 1.5. Kuro, I'm going to put Takura tier 6. He's just too slow at this point. Same with Arlong, but I think Arlong gets way better in OP06. Nami, I'm also going to put Nami here in tier 2, which is disgusting, but Nami, you just play solitaire, and then if you can, I think Nami technically gets some cards. I don't really remember, but I know Nami had shown up a couple of times. Like, this could power out very well top an event, like top 32, top 64. Same with like any of these. I think all of these with the correct pilot and the right matchups can make their way to pricing for sure. And then these are going to have, like, these levels are going to be consistent, and then these will find their way in. And then we have Iceberg. Iceberg's tier 6. I think this card was massively... I wish this leader had been played more. I wish I had time on this leader because I would have loved to play him. I've seen him at locals doing fairly well during this weird OPO 4.5 format. Luchi, I'm going to put Luchi at tier 2. I would love, again, I think top in tier 2 is Ace and then Luchi. Luchi because you get access. People are talking about Luchi, playing the whole Luchi engine. You don't get Hound Blaze and those cards. But most of that engine does resolve around Borsellino, Kuzan, Mancheri, and Hina, and all of those black cards that you play to minus and then remove with Luchi, just pow. And so I'm putting Luchi here at tier 2 because, again, very strong. He could be, again, tier 1.5. If there was a tier 1.5, I think it'd be these two. Big Mom, I'm going to put it at tier 6. Sorry, Jackson. And then we've got Katakuri. I'm going to put Katakuri here at tier 1 just because Katakuri is very good into Sakazuki. Tin Mom has never been bad. Tin Mom's very strong. Getting a 12k beater and also creating a 2-life deficit. So you gain a life, they lose a life, so creating a 2-life difference between you and your opponent is a huge gap. And then on top of that, you get a character that, if they don't have a blocker, is swinging and connecting, or is clearing any character that they have. Vivi, I'm going to put Vivi down here at tier 6. Now, I'm really interested to see about this leader. Because a lot of people have been talking about Gerpel Doflamingo. I talked to a lot of players, what their ambitions for Set5 are, and I know a number of people are saying they're going to stick with green-purple Doflamingo. I know the purple side, again, gets a lot of support. Those Dawn minus, and it's a 5/6 blocker. So right now, in the version that people are playing, they are playing 5/6 blockers already. They could play long. They could replace Queen possibly with that if they wanted to play more of the Dawn minus cards. I'm not sure what they gain on the green side, mostly because there's no green cards really showing up. And so I'm really intrigued to see here where this really lands, because Asia essentially makes the meta, and then we really take it and define the meta, because they have to figure out what's good, what isn't, and so much more. And then so they have 2-3 weeks to figure it out. Then they halfway through the format they were like, oh wait, Sakazuki's busted, because it was a lot of purple Luffy and Enel. But now it changed, and then it became super Sakazuki dominated. And then they pass that on to us, and then we got to figure, because they're like, oh, this combo is pretty much unbeatable. And so now they pass it on to us, and we got to figure out, is it really, is this our next Newgate? Is this playable? Do we figure out how we beat it? But essentially, I think what defines tier 0 is if you build a deck, if people have to build their deck around your deck, I think that defines a tier 0 deck. But I'm going to put Gerpel Doflamingo. I want to put it tier 3. I'm going to put it tier 2. Just because I think it's better than Magellan. But I do think there's the possibility we see this, especially earlier on. You do have the film package, which allows you to go very wide. And going wide is exactly what you need to counteract Sakazuki. You want to be able to spit out. If you can go Luffy, Brook, Nami, Search, do it again after they remove a couple, then it creates a problem, because they can only cycle and recycle so many times. So I think he can find his way in. It really depends. Of course, if we get a list, if anything in Sakazuki is hit, I think we could see Gerpel Doflamingo a lot. And then Isho, I'm going to put Isho here. Just because, again, you have the Luchi combo on the black side. So you have the Luchi combo, then you have green cards. Same with him, with Z or Zephyr. I think both of these, I believe you can play the Luchi. I don't think they're locked by anything. But I think these are tier 3. Rebecca. A lot of people think Rebecca's pretty good. I've been hearing a lot of rumblings about Rebecca. If there was a 2.5, I would definitely categorize Rebecca as 2.5. I'm going to say Rebecca's a 3. I think it has potential. I think it's pretty slow, but being able to swing into active characters with Luffy, always strong. And Kurita, being able to attack the turn you play a card, so that way you can get rid of things like Corazon. I know Cross was just playing Rebecca at Cancun with Corazon, and he said he was loving it. So I could very well see, maybe it's Luchi Rebecca, maybe somebody takes that and runs with it, and that very well could be something. So I think it's flexible. I think it's between 2 and 3. Like I said, if there was a 2.5, that's where I would place it, because it is quite possible someone figures out how to run Rebecca in a way where they could potentially secure a top 32, top 64, maybe even a top 16. So I think that this has that potential. I think at the local level as well, someone can bring home the tournament with this. Now, Queen, I hate Queen. Okay? I need y'all to know that right now. Stack, I don't like it. But if I had to place it, I'm going to place it in tier 2. Mostly because the deck just does the same thing. It plays big bodies, gains life. Plays big bodies, gains life. And for most decks, if you don't specifically know how to play Queen, or play against Queen, it can definitely be a problem. And I think it can see some level of success. I know a number of people were playing around with Queen, and then yellow gets a huge buff on that side. So yeah, I think that's where I think Queen is tier 2. Yellow, purple, Croc. Yellow and purple have both gotten a huge boost in this set. I'm going to place it at tier 3. He didn't really do anything, but as we know, the Laker Croc, I've lost to Laker Croc. I think, honestly, it's one of Ace's worst matchups, weirdly enough. Just because, they play a 9-drop and gain a life. They play a 9 can gain a life. So it's a slightly more annoying yellow. You can Flame Emperor, but sometimes it's weird. But sometimes it's just actually, really strong. I can't explain it. But yeah, I think he's tier 3. I think I put him here because, again, I think, you've got the yellow, you've got the purple. Obviously, he has purple support cards on his side. Yellow's gotten a huge buff. There's some crazy events on that side, with all of the new stuff for the Enel events and all of that. We're going to put Uda here. Luffy. I actually have heard some people say they really like Luffy. I'm going to put Luffy, again, if there was a 2.5, I'd probably put him there. Playing with one extra Dawn is always very solid. So I think he's tier 3, possibly like 2.5. I think it's Thomas Wynn. He played Luffy a number of times both in the 3v3s and in some regionals, and saw success with him a number of times. So I think it's definitely like doable. Red, again, I don't think gaining anything of value this set, but just playing with 6 Dawn, being able to go up, swinging to Newgate, all kinds of things. Just that extra oomph just really makes a difference. Now, Kid, I'm going to put Kid at 2. Just because even against like a leader like Sakazuki, you can swing twice. So it's never bad. And you've got the whole film package plus the new, Uda's better. Uda, the cards, you gain more. Leader says draw 1. I'd put Uda at tier 1. I think Eustace is like 2.5. We got Crocodile. I'm going to put Crocodile at 3. Blue, Red Rock. That other one. 3,000 Swords. 3,000 Worlds. Really good removal. And then, of course, the leader as well. It doesn't really gain anything incredible, but very annoying to play against as it is, and I think it just continues to be that way. Kaido, Purple Kaido. I'm going to put Purple Kaido in tier 2 just because I think Kaido is better than Magellan. Just because of your opponent, if you have at least 7 Dawn or are going to have 7 Dawn, and you have a character on board, you usually play a big beater. But if your opponent has 2 life, they really only have 1. Because you go 7, swing, and then so they have to be able to stop 12. If they don't have a blocker, they take 12. And then you rip 7, and they lose their last life, and you swing with your big beater. And so that's super strong, especially if you have something like the 7-drop Eustace to boost him, make him a 6k leader. I think he's underrated, truthfully. But yeah, I'll put him at tier 2. Again, I think Ace is the top dog in tier 2, followed by Luchi because you've got the Luchi engine. Purple Shanks, hate to say it, tier 6. The other Sakazuki. I'm going to put him here at 3. Only because, again, like Luchi swings twice, though, so Luchi is Kid with the Luchi engine, whereas he can, of course, play the Luchi engine just on that black side. I wish this leader was better. I wish they had made this one better, and then they didn't have any need to make the new leader, but that is what it is. But yeah, just the Luchi engine, it's pretty busted. You play Borsellino, Kuzan, and you play Luchi, and you just minus things, and then you remove them. You play Branu, and you play Hina, and you play Rebecca, so you can recycle, and you're just cooking. And I think, honestly, it could even be tier 2, truthfully. Probably on the low end, like the bottom end of tier 2. But I think, you can just play it. I think the leader ability is lackluster, but he's a black leader, so you could just play the full same thing, except minus the Hound Blaze. But Hound Blaze is busted. Hound Blaze is busted. I think Hound Blaze should be banned. We've got Yellow Big Mom. I'm going to also put Yellow Big Mom at 3. Katakuri swings 7, which makes him super strong. And then you also get Life Knowledge. This Big Mom, you can play. It's built to play something else, but she can still play 10 Mom, which is still a strong card, which is why I'm going to place her here in tier 3, but is why I don't think she's tier 2. And of course, Katakuri, that's 7. Just like same with Luffy, that 1k, that 1 extra power really makes a difference. Black Luffy, I'm also going to put in tier 3. Same thing. I believe you can still play the Luchi engine here. I don't think he's locked by any kind of leaders. And I think just the Luchi engine is just that strong. You'd slap it into any deck. that it works with. And every time you destroy a character, you gain a Dawn on here. So if you slap down Luchi, you actually can have a 7k swing, assuming you destroy 2 cards with him. So I think he's tier 3. I think he's like upper tier 3. I think he's near the top. And then Yamato, I wish Yamato was better. Super excited for OP06, so we have a solid Yamato leader. I love the art on this one, though. It's one of my favorite cards. I'm going to put Yamato at tier 4. Just because the yellow cards, you do get new yellow cards. Honestly, I'm going to put her at 3. I'm going to put her at 3. Just because you do get new yellow cards, you get the Skypiea cards, and those cards are pretty strong overall. A lot of Katakuri is playing a huge Skypiea engine as opposed to like the big Big Mom package. Now Sabo, let's talk about him. Let me pull up his effect and I'll read it. Hang on. So Sabo is decent. Dawn X1, opponent's turn, once per turn. If your character with 5,000 power or more would be KO'd, you may give that character minus 1,000 power during this turn instead of that character being KO'd. Now, if I recall correctly, this means like if there's a blanket destruction that's like for all of them simultaneously, if you minus, it saves all of them. I believe that's how that was ruled. And with that, I say, I put him in tier 2. But I think Ace is the top of tier 2. I think Sabo is near the bottom of tier 2. Honestly, there might be something. Again, I don't believe that the... Here, let me just... Yeah, the new Luchi is not locked by any leader. And so I think, again, and this might be the sauce leaked, but I think there's a version of Sabo that plays the Luchi engine that's really strong. I think a lot of people want to lean into like the Revolutionary Army or lean into other things, but I think there's a version of Sabo where you play the Luchi package and you also play like the best side of red, and there might be something reasonable there. And then of course if somebody tries to Luchi you can save your characters. Again, I believe it's like in the instance that they would be destroyed. If it's destroying multiple at once, you just minus and they'll both be saved. So it only happens once, but it makes Luchi less effective. And so I'm a fan. I think there's something here. I'm really excited to mess around with Sabo at some point. But definitely let me know if you all would like to see some Sabo content. Bellow Betty. I'm going to put Bellow Betty in tier 1. Bellow Betty is essentially a better Zoro. Bellow, you can discard a card from your hand. I believe it has to be a Revolutionary Army. It might be Revolutionary Army or Trigger. But you discard one, and then you can select up to 3 Revolutionary Army or Trigger characters to gain 3,000 power each. So you have a 1-drop 2k that becomes a 5k. All of your 5ks become 8ks. You play a character that can minus your opponent's leader when they have over 8k or when they have over 7k. And so you can make your opponent a 4k leader and swing into him. And essentially Bellow sets up for 1 gigantic turn. You do your gigantic turn all your cards sideways, and then your opponent either has to win the next turn or be able to completely clear your board and then win the turn after. So it puts a lot of pressure in the game. Of course, like those small drops easily cleared by Sakazuki. Possibly, if they play Fire Fist, they could clear some of those characters since you don't have Rush. You have to get set up, but you play a ton of triggers too. A lot of the cards are triggers, so like your opponent swings in, you get a Cracker. Cracker's got double attack, cracks your life. Very strong. I think it's tier 1. I think it's the lower end of tier 1 because it's less consistent and you have low resources, so it's very easy for them to connect with your life after you've like made your play because you have to discard the boost. But I think it's very strong. Then we've got Corazon. I'm going to put Corazon in tier 3. Blue and green. I think, you know, the leader's a blocker, so you essentially get a free Bonnie or a free, I don't remember who the other one was. But you essentially get like a free search. Oh, it's BB5, I think. And she rests herself as well. So if like your opponent goes to swing, you can block, or if they try to do like a 200 swing, you can block, but you do have to keep your hand smaller. I think this card could have been so great. If he was a 6K leader, this card could have been phenomenal. He's just your leader's a free block from the beginning to protect your bodies. And then, of course, he doesn't take damage, so typically you can just force the swing here, and then he probably ends up taking the damage. But a lot of things you can do with Corazon. I think he could have been a great leader. But blue, again, just has an amazing removal. Green, again, I don't think gained too much from the set. And he doesn't really do anything, but like you could see in terms of competitive, he doesn't show up. But in terms of like your local levels, this could be, you know, like in prizing and locals. Sakazuki tier 0. You've got Houndblaze, so your brand new swings for 6, or I think your leader can swing for 8. I'm pretty sure Houndblaze can increase your leader. Cost 2, gains 3, and removes characters. Absolutely absurd. You play characters like Kuzan, Hina to minus, followed up with a Luchi to remove, or possibly 3000 Worlds, things like that. You can remove big characters after just 2 minuses, but essentially the deck centers around minusing, then removing, while also recycling cards through Rebecca and Manshiri, and then essentially just like looping the cards and then dumping them with brand new. So that way, like if they're there, if Hina's in your trash, Rebecca's going to grab Hina, play Hina, and then play whatever else they need to remove your characters. And then, of course, Rebecca also being a blocker. So if you do a swing, they can block it with Rebecca. Again, kind of why it's great that Marco's back, though. Rebecca is 0, so you can play a Marco, pop that Rebecca. But then they can, I believe it's Manshiri, they add Rebecca back with. So it really just, it loops a lot and recycles. But yeah, I think it's just once that was really figured out, once they really figured out that Sakazuki was that strong, they really just ran with it. But now we've got Purple Luffy. I'm going to put Purple Luffy in tier 1. I think he's on the higher end of tier 1. I think Zoro's near the lower end of tier 1. But I'm putting Purple Luffy at tier 1 just because he's good. Ramping is very strong. You can go wide. You get the new purple cards. Ton of utility as far as the leader goes. And you also essentially, so you add a card to your hand. And with your opponent's big handing, you've got the access to the 4-drop law. So you can really like chip away at their resources. Newgate. If you're playing against Newgate and you drop that, it's like, boom, 2 free cards. It's like swing 6. You know, it really helps you just eat away at those extra resources while also possibly, like, you know, hitting those key events. Welcome back, Radical Beam, of course. But yeah, I think Luffy really has that. You know, the build has varied a lot as the format has evolved, and it just really goes to show how versatile and adaptive that the deck can be. He fades out next set for sure. Which is really interesting, and I'll be making a video like kind of talking about that a little bit. But essentially, like, he's only good this set, so if that's any encouragement to play him, definitely use that. And then we've got Enel. He's also tier 1. I think obviously these new leaders, if I had to rank them in order, it'd probably be Katakuri. Not in order, but like top 3 in this tier are going to be Purple Luffy, Katakuri, and Enel. Just because Enel, you have to know how to play against him, but essentially he's always 2 life. Because you hit him, then he gains life, and you have to do 3 hits to finish him, and he's going to gain 2 cards in that moment. And so your last attack has to be at least pretty big. And then you get like Yamato, or you can Katakuri loop it, and just continually add like your Katakuri in, so that you can play Katakuri, swing, and then next turn play Katakuri, add Katakuri back into your life if you go to 0, because you really like ideally put them at 0 at least, while also chipping away at their hand. And then once you're chipping away their hand, you will slowly like eat that away. But again, like when they gain a life, then they're going to gain another, so they're going to regain hand. They get the cycle because they have to discard, but if they have no cards in hand, they still gain a life and don't have to discard. So that's one thing that's really cool about this leader. Now, some of my favorites. The Red Purple Law. I'm going to put Red Purple Law in tier 1. I think he's tier 1.5. He auto loses to Ace too. I'll stand on that. Ace is really good into Red Purple Law. Just because, like, even with the new stuff, he runs out of steam. But I think he has what it takes to be competitive. I don't think it's on a grand scale, but he will show up. And I think that's kind of like what tier 0, tier 1 are. That these show up. I think, again, like I would put him 1.5, but I think he's too good to be tier 2. Because I think he shows up more than all of these leaders in the competitive format, but he doesn't show up as much as all the other ones. And then we also have the Luffy. I'm also putting Luffy in tier 1 because this Luffy is honestly a better Newgate. You don't get as many cards, but this leader doesn't have to go to 0. So this leader goes down to 1, and then by the time they're at 1, they're usually at 10 Dawn and have already played some massive characters. So even decks like Sakazuki, it takes a lot of resources to remove one of these big characters. And then you've got Johnny, who decided to play Douglas Bullet, and Bullet is an absolute beast. Douglas Bullet can rest 2 blockers and then also swing for double attack. And if your opponent has 2 life, you connect he swings 10 double attack. And then on top of that, you follow up with like a 10 rush Luffy with 11, possibly more Dawn. If you don't, like, it could very well be GG because Douglas can rest 2 blockers. And I think that was just genius. I thought Douglas was good for a long time. I'm like, this card is just absurd. But yeah, I think that this card is really going to shine. And I think it's underrated. I think Newgate, of course, like I think this card was tier 6 without everything. But with 4 Newgate being an 8K, and if you played a Eustace before, being a 9K leader, possibly for 2 turns, it takes a lot to swing on 9. It takes a lot to swing on 9. And then you counter out for like 1 card. They use like their whole turn to get 2 cards. And then you possibly do it again while also swinging into them with some giant characters. I think this leader has a ton of potential, especially because now we get 4 Radical Beam, 4 Newgate. He already was thriving. And I think he's better against Newgate too, because he can swing even, but he doesn't have to go to 0 against Newgate. So he can continually put pressure on without having to worry about an all-in attack taking him out, and then Newgate's forced to play defensively. Kid, I'm going to put him at a tier 3, and this is pure copium. This is the last leader that we have here. But I think, like, these are so good. I think he has potential. I would absolutely love to experiment with this leader and really just see what he can do. But yeah, these are how I would rank the leaders. I think that this is pretty fair. I hope you all found this helpful, and as always, thank you all